hoax.
I'm saying that the photo that the New York Times ran and then ran a correction on is a part of a propaganda campaign that is occurring right now.
I do not agree with you on the New York Times photo, but let's say that one was wrong. They ran a correction. Fine. What about all of the other children?
Sure.
What about all of the other hoaxes? So when you say that this is a hoax, Scott, no, Scott, I'm putting a stop to the talking points. Okay? That's what I'm doing here.
Here's the deal. Scott Jennings showed up on CNN's Newsnight with Abby Phillip, and wow, was Abby geared up for a showdown. From the very start, the tension was palpable. She was completely prepared to dive right in. To Jennings, it felt like déjà vu, a never-ending cycle, just like Groundhog Day. It was the usual routine, CNN getting all stirred up over Trump's tariffs, stirring in some drama about Israel and Gaza, and labeling it as breaking news. Scott tried to explain Trump's economic successes, the strong market, the impressive growth numbers, the hard data, but the panel reacted as if he was speaking a foreign language. The real ridiculousness shows up when the CNN commentators keep pretending to be surprised whenever Jennings brings up facts that challenge their constant negative storyline. It's like déjà vu. He speaks, they eye-roll, and it all spirals into mayhem. Abby Phillip appeared ready to snap even before he finished a single sentence. With everything in disarray, Scott Jennings calmly presented the facts while the panel unraveled.
Have estimated what the impact of that is going to be on the economy. And what we've concluded is that you're going to see price increases for the average American family of around $2,400 annually, and a smaller economy because less growth and less investment in this country means fewer jobs by around 0.5 percentage points of GDP, which is about $150 billion. That boils down to like $1,000 out of every American family's pocket because the economy is going to be smaller than it would have been in the absence of this trade war.
Maybe that explains why Josh Hawley wants to hand out $600 rebate checks for the tariffs that people are going to be paying now.
Yeah, I don't know about that idea because part of the issue of bringing in the tariff money is to help alleviate some of our national debt, I think, and to pay for other priorities. I mean, I hear your talking points, but look, GDP came in at 3%.
Those are also
you all can laugh, but GDP is 3%. The market's at record highs. People are investing in America. I don't.
Okay,
this doom and gloom of
Scott, let me clear this up.
Let
me clear this up for you, Scott. What you just said were talking points. What she just said, were facts.
GDP is 3%. The market is up. Companies are deals are being cut.
GDP is 3%. GDP this year so far, for the first 2 quarters of this year, is an average of 1.2%. For all of 2024, it was 2.8%. So really, we're actually growing at on average at a. And I don't even want to overstate this, but if you're using GDP as a metric,
it just came out.
I'm just pointing out that if you look at it over the course of the time that Donald Trump has been in office, the number is not a terribly impressive number. But let me let Natasha respond because
to Abby's point about the 3% that you're quoting, Scott, I think it's actually really quite important to put it in context. So here are some more numbers. It's true that growth at this point last year was more like 2.4%. It's also true that in November, when we predicted what growth was going to look like based on the economic trajectory, we were anticipating growth in the first half of this year of around 2.2%. What we've actually seen is growth at around 1.2%. And that is
what was it in the last quarter? It was 3% after his policies fully took office.
I think it would be useful.
I mean, Scott, do you understand that there's a first quarter and a second quarter? And when you take first and second and you average them together, you get a number that is 1.2%.
Administration was the second quarter.
These are just numbers. It's just math we're talking about. Why are you fighting about math? It's just math. Okay?
Why are you fighting the policies that are working?
Because
Go ahead, Lee.
Most Americans don't speak math. Said, I'm having such a hard time right now because there's 2 things that I've always thought of myself as, an American and a Jew. And he's like, and right now I feel isolated from both communities, and it is the weirdest feeling. And I think a lot of people feel like that. They know what's happening, they can see what's happening, and they want it to stop.
We have to address, I mean, I agree with you. Young people are seeing things with their own eyes. And what they're seeing is massive amounts of propaganda. Look what the New York Times had to admit to just in the last few days. I've heard repeat.
What did the New York Times
They admitted
running
they,
a photo
hold
that was
on.
a complete and total hoax.
They admitted that they ran a photo of a starving child who also had a disease.
You're gonna defend
Is that
this?
the admission?
It's
Scott,
a
you're
hoax.
gonna act like people
and
aren't
it was
starving?
sent around the world
Okay.
to make people
Scott,
think that Israel
what
had
about
starved that
all
child. He had a pre-existing
what
condition.
about all the other children in that story? What about them? Are they a hoax?
Abby,
Don't-
there is a
no, no, no,
there is
don't,
a
Abby,
there is a
don't- no.
Abby,
Okay.
there
Don't-
is a
don't
coordinated
do that,
propaganda
Scott.
campaign
Don't do
right
that,
now
Scott.
to
Are
paint
all
a
of those
distorted
other-
picture of what's happening.
Are all of those other children a hoax?
Some of them are. There have been other stories
all
about
of those
children
other
that
children a
Israel is
hoax?
actually paying
There
to
have
have
been
taken care of for their pre-existing
25
conditions.
Even
people
President Trump has
died
admitted
of
there is
starvation.
starvation in Gaza.
And on top of
Scott,
that,
hang on a second. You just claimed that this whole thing
They ran
was
a
hoax.
correction. They ran a correction.
What you claimed was that all of these young people, not just young people, but everybody in the world, the photos that they're seeing, the stories that they're reading, the first-person accounts are a hoax? Are they a hoax?
I'm saying that the photo that the New York Times ran and then ran
Okay.
a correction on is a part of a propaganda campaign that is occurring right now.
I do not agree with you on the New York Times photo, but let's say that one was wrong. They ran a correction. Fine. What about all of the other children?
Sure.
What about all of the other
What about
people?
all of the other
So
hoaxes?
when you
I've
say
heard
that this
people
is a
say-
hoax, Scott,
Wait.
no, Scott, I'm putting a stop to the talking points. Okay, that's what I'm doing here.
Are you?
Because I'm talking about human beings.
When are we gonna put a stop to the propaganda?
Listen, we've said it before on this show. We are talking about real things here, not talking points. Leave the talking points at the door.
Can I give you another example?
Scott, just hold on for just 1 second because
Things took a comically bizarre turn when CNN brought in someone claiming to be an expert from the Yale Budget Lab. This person went on to give an elaborate forecast about what they thought might happen because of Trump's tariffs. The panel sat there like they were in a church pew, nodding in agreement without anyone raising a challenge or question. When Scott Jennings spoke up, he remarked, "I catch your talking points." This prompted the panel to laugh, as if he had confessed to flunking his economics course. Scott wasn't poking fun at economics, he was pointing out the difference between real data and predictions being passed off as facts. That's when Abby Phillip chimed in with a self-assured correction, saying, "No, Scott, those are facts." When did forecasts suddenly become facts? A guess from Yale holds as much weight as a weather prediction. You can't call the rain a sure thing until it actually falls. Yet, CNN likes to blur these lines to fit their story. Meanwhile, Jennings is laying out solid proof. A 3% GDP growth rate, stock markets soaring to all-time highs, and a surge of foreign investment into the U.S. He's backing up his argument with actual numbers, while they're focusing on uncertain could, might, maybe situations. Then, unexpectedly, things get even weirder. Abby stops laughing and starts scolding Scott, treating him like a kid getting a lecture. She retorts, "We focus on actual issues, not just talking points." Really? Just moments ago, her group was presenting conjectures as if they were absolute truth. That's not engaging with the facts. That's spinning a story. And here's the kicker. Scott asked the question everyone's been wondering for what feels like forever. If the economy is doing well, employment is solid, and the markets are flourishing, why does CNN keep pushing a narrative of impending disaster? Why are they so bothered by prosperity? They avoid this question because acknowledging that Trump's policies strengthen the U.S. economy would completely undermine their narrative.
The world to make sure that happens.
I agree with everything he said.
I want to just underscore real quick. I want to give him a lot of credit for that. I mean, maybe it's more than he just answered the question honestly. He didn't try to spin it. He didn't call it a hoax. It is a choice to call what is happening in Gaza a hoax. You might disagree with the decision to run a single photo.
I'm talking about the photo.
But your
and
comments,
it's an example of the kind of propaganda that's being used to color public opinion.
I'm asking you
That's
to
my
pull
point.
back from this ledge, okay? That is what I'm asking. And answer the question honestly. That photo, let's say that photo was maybe the wrong editorial decision, but is what is happening over there a hoax?
No,
Okay,
I agree with
thank
everything
you.
Johnson
Thank
said.
you.
There is a humanitarian crisis, but the question was, why is public opinion changing? And I'm telling you that it's changing because people are being misinformed. There's another example.
No, it's
for
changing
days,
because we are no longer
we've
being
been told that
misinformed.
there's no evidence that Hamas is looting the trucks. Today, the United Nations' own data that they published said 90% of the trucks from May to July were looted by Hamas.
Okay, that data.
So again,
hold on, Scott,
propaganda.
Stop. That data says that those trucks that you're talking about, it's not 90%, but those trucks that you are talking about were either taken by hungry people or by armed looters.
And who are the armed looters?
And hold on a second, Scott. Do you know what proportion of those trucks were taken by armed looters versus hungry people? No, you don't.
There are armed Hamas looters.
Scott, so I'm just saying. I am just saying.
But I'm just saying.
Just one
we've
second.
said no evidence. There's evidence.
I am just saying. We have reporters in Gaza who are talking to women and families who go to the entrance points for aid trucks. And they go there to try to get aid directly from the trucks because they are worried about going to the distribution sites because it is dangerous. So those hungry people are, quote unquote, looting from the trucks to survive. So I just want to make that point.
This is the point where Abby Phillip completely lost her cool. Rather than tackling Scott Jennings' question about why support for Israel seems to be waning among Americans, she veered off into a personal rant. Scott offered a reasonable explanation that many would nod their heads to. People's trust has been shaken because of the endless stream of misinformation. He mentioned a particular instance where the New York Times published a photo of a child with pre-existing health problems, suggesting Israel was depriving children of food, but later had to walk it back. This isn't just speculation, it really happened. However, Abby brushed it off as a legitimate argument and instead branded it as an absurd conspiracy. Suddenly, she accused Scott of suggesting that the existence of starving children in Gaza was completely made up. Nobody ever made such a claim. Scott acknowledged the humanitarian crisis and highlighted the suffering, emphasizing how propaganda can twist genuine distress into political tools. Abby overlooked what he truly said and fabricated a stance he never took. This is a big reason why many are drifting away from traditional media. It has shifted from real conversation to twisting facts, misrepresenting talks, and portraying opponents as the bad guys instead of honestly addressing their actual words. Abby came across as if she were telling Scott off rather than having a real conversation. It seemed like she wasn't truly listening because she was just responding to what she assumed he was saying. At this point, Jennings might have just taken a step back since this wasn't a true conversation. It was a total breakdown. Honestly, the more CNN sticks to this style, the crazier they seem to everyday viewers who just want the facts. For context, the New York Times photo issue probably refers to an article from August 2025 that got flack for showing a misleading image of a malnourished Palestinian child, suggesting that Israel was to blame for the hunger. After receiving criticism, the Times published a correction, acknowledging the child's prior health issues, as Jennings pointed out. This fits into the ongoing chatter on X about a German investigation into fake Palestinian images like a Time magazine cover, sparking wider concerns about media distortion. At the same time, Abby's remarks about the situation for other children align with confirmed reports from the UN and aid organizations, highlighting a humanitarian crisis in Gaza with thousands of civilian deaths and widespread hunger. Jennings' claim that Hamas is taking 90% of the aid trucks is partly backed by UN data, but it's a bit of a simplification. The reality is that both armed groups and desperate individuals are involved, and there's no detailed breakdown of the thefts. The economic discussion mentions a 3% GDP for the second quarter of 2025, but the panel's prediction of a 1.2% annual average for that year highlights weaker first-quarter numbers, emphasizing the selective use of data. People are still discussing the effects of tariffs. Some studies suggest they could increase household costs by $2,400 a year, while X conversations suggest there could be economic perks to counterbalance these costs. So, let me ask you this. Do you think I'm blowing Abby's behavior out of proportion? Or have you also observed that she tends to get more confrontational and unfriendly whenever Scott joins her on the panel? Let me know what you think in the comments, as I'm curious if you're noticing the same thing I am. Catch you later. Thanks for tuning in.